good one down in the Bluffton area. The Bluffton campus that houses the high school, the middle school, and and Bluffton Elementary is almost totally surrounded by housing developments, okay? One of them is called the farm. Well, to get from the farm over onto the campus, you've got to cross Buckwalter Parkway. Even though we put crossing guards there, there's a lot of parents who have insisted, and we've tried to comply with providing buses over there so that they don't have to cross that busy highway. And that goes on in a lot of places. That's just the one that jumps to my head right away. And I know, in fact, how do I say this properly? I have a kind of a pet peeve about all the car riders, okay? Because we're already paying for the buses. We have to. We don't have any choice. It says, okay, this student lives this far from school, you must provide a bus. It doesn't matter that the student or the parent says, no, we're going to drive our child to school every day, you don't have to pick them up. We're required to have an active bus route that can pick that child up. So we really don't make a savings on that, okay? And I look at places, I mean, when I was working for the district, one of my jobs was to deal with community complaints and concerns. I can't tell you the number I used to get about car lines and car riders and how long the lines were and those kinds of things. And I know, because I now have a granddaughter attending Crusoe Elementary School, you go there in the afternoon and it's not unusual for there to be 100 plus vehicles waiting in line to pick up children, and that it takes, I'm surprised at how quickly it gets done. But I'm always concerned with the danger that's imminent there, because you're dealing with elementary kids who don't always do exactly what they're told to do and don't think about the fact that there's a whole bunch of cars right there.
Well, I just will say, for at least Shell Point, I live in picket fences, and I'm less than probably a mile from school.
But you have a very busy highway, too, now.
That's why I drive her, because the children were picked up on Paris Island Gateway, so I won't let her ride the bus. Because as you said, elementary kids don't always do what they're supposed to, so I drive her to school and pick her up from school as a safety precaution. And anyway, so I know there are reasons why parents do drive, because we were close to the
Oh, I understand why people drive. I understand why they pick their children up, because they have after-school activities that they take their children to. I understand all that. I just, it bothers me that we put the buses in place and spend millions of dollars on the buses, and they really go greatly unused in some cases. And I understand the danger part. Where we live on Ladies Island, to leave, there's a bus stop on a very sharp curve where there's always, depending when I'm going out, but it's not uncommon in the morning for there to be elementary or middle school age kids standing there, and middle school kids being middle school kids, sometimes they stand real close to the highway to just see how close somebody can come. It's almost like a dare, it's like, I dare you to stand out there while this guy comes down the road, and then they kind of jump away at the last moment,
So then the savings when Shell Point would be closed is just basically salary for staff, teachers, and what else?
Well, I don't expect we're going to make any teacher savings.
Well, I'm
But some of the redundant positions, yes. I mean, when the students move, you won't have 2 nurses, you won't have 2 bookkeepers, you won't have 2 principals, you won't have 2 assistant principals, you probably won't have 2 guidance counselors, depending on how large the numbers actually get. I mean, we have a formula for when we put those people in place. So those are the monies. Utilities, transportation's kind of a wash. I mean, it's one of the reasons that I looked at Port Royal being different, because some of the kids do walk. And if we had closed Port Royal, we would have actually incurred cost in busing the students. And because the building is owned by the town, we would have not had the benefit of possibly leasing it out or selling it and making money off of it. It would have just become zero, basically, except we would have incurred, I think the estimate was $85,000 in busing costs to move the kids. I was a little surprised at that number because that sounded like 2 buses to me, and I thought it was going to take more than 2 buses to move all the Port Royal kids someplace.
Thank you, please.
I have 2 questions somewhat unrelated. First question is, I think I've heard you talk about neighborhood schools, feelings about neighborhood schools. I know there's a school board member that said that he felt bad about closing South Shell Point because it was another nail in the coffin of the neighborhood school. What is your feeling about neighborhood schools for the future in your county?
Well, I think it's a good plan, but I sit with there's an active group, and I'm on 2 other committees locally. One is the Northern Regional Planning Committee, and one of their goals, since they were formed by the county council, was to try and create neighborhood settings, not just for schools, but for commercial development, for housing, and kind of put services together. There's another group that's less formal, that's called, well, it was called Beaufort 2050, it's now called Sea Island 2050, that's looking, they're very much into new urbanism and such, of trying to do that, have communities that are kind of self-service. I mean, all your needs are right there in that community. Well, Port Royal has that as a matter of circumstance from the development of the town and the development of the school, well, 100 years ago. Okay? But it's a hard model to put in place in a county where we have so much rural property. I mean, I'm sure the Whale Branch people think of themselves as a community, but the schools are hardly community schools in the concept that people can walk to them. I would be really surprised if there's where the middle school and elementary school are. I'm not sure how many houses are down that road, but there can't be that many kids who can get to school without riding a bus. And of course, Davis was that way. The whole St. Helena area is that way. A good bit of Hilton Head is that way. And certainly, even though we had the Bluffton campus, a lot of the other schools, well, Red Cedar's an exception because it's built right in the middle of several housing communities. But Okatee and Pritchardville are both schools where right now there's not that much housing around them. So I think it's a great concept because I think it's wonderful for communities to have that kind of central place and such. But it's a hard model to put on top of a county that's 300 years old, and say, good, we're going to impose this when that isn't the way your population centers are. It worked in Bluffton because when the developer came in and wanted to start developing the Bluffton area, he gave us 100 or more acres for the schools because, as a smart developer, I think he looked at it and said, well, this will really add value to the homes that I want to build because everybody will be able to go to school right here. But it just doesn't fit in lots of areas. I mean, I spent 12 years on Hilton Head, and even though part of the school campus ran right up against Hilton Head Plantation, there was never any formal bikeway or walkway. I will tell you, the kids found their own way through the woods and had their own paths and everything else. But there was never a formal plan, and even some apartment units that were built right next to the school have a very busy street in between, and there's a lot of people, just like I mentioned down in Bluffton, who don't want their children crossing that street.
My second question, unrelated, is there now movement for a second charter school in the district? And I think it was an editorial recently I read where Chairman Washington thought that maybe it would do harm to the community, or harm to the budget probably more so than anything. What is your feeling about charter schools in general, and then also the time for a second school to come in?
I think charter schools are good. I think they can give us some option. I worry about whether the existing one is innovative, which is one of the things you look for in a charter school. You're supposed to have something that provides students with something they couldn't get someplace else. To be honest, I've visited Riverview a number of times. I read their stuff. I mean, I read their charter, I read their goals and stuff. I'm not real sure what they do that isn't offered at other schools that those kids would have attended. Maybe they could articulate that better. If, for instance, somebody came along and wanted to do a charter school that was a language immersion for elementary kids, I could sit down and say, okay, that's innovative, and it has a purpose in our global society to say, this might be a good thing, to sit down and have a school that maybe allowed students to be immersed in Spanish or Japanese or Chinese or something like that. That could be innovative and could serve what I could see as certainly a need going forward. In our particular case, because of EFA funding, charter schools cost us more. Because we have to figure, now I know Riverview debates that with us all the time, but the charter school law requires that they get EFA funding, okay? Since we don't get EFA funding, the only place it can come from is our general budget, our general fund. So we give them, we estimate that it costs us about $10,600 to educate a student. We give Riverview less than that, okay? One of the things that I have encouraged the district administration to do is talk about what the separation is, what things that we're paying for as a district that Riverview doesn't have to pay for. Transportation is a good example. Riverview does not provide transportation, okay? So that's a big cost. I'm not sure how much it is. Is it free or do they charge for it?
It's not free to the parents, but it's something that they've done in conjunction with the district. And it's a bus that they utilize when they're putting them to school.
Okay.